And I was saying that the problem we've got there, let me just take the mesh off, is, I mean, it looks okay from that angle, but when you look along the highlights, I wasn't happy with the way the highlights do this. They're a bit nasty. I mean, you could get away with it, you know, if you were just shading that up, you could probably get away with it. And but it's when you start to use the highlight tools, you know, there it doesn't look so bad. Well, maybe it does, but you know, if you put some softer shading on, you can't see any problem with it. But as soon as you put on this sort of diagnostic tool, then you can see there's a problem there. So we need to, well, I feel we need to solve that one. Now this plane here, I'm just going to put that onto the plane layer, so get it out of the way. And I might as well get rid of this curve. I don't know what that's doing there. Don't need that. So what I'm going to look at is, if we just isolate, well, we've pretty much got what we need. Actually, we don't need to isolate anything. We just keep that as it is. But if I go into isoang, so this is at the minute, I really want to look at the Z direction, and so this is what this is showing us is lines of. So each line here is at a constant angle compared with the Z direction. That's what that's saying. So I've got Z or 0, 0, 1 as a vector. And it's saying that this line here is at a constant angle to the Z direction. And it's a very powerful way of analyzing the surfaces. But the problem is here, I want to modify this surface because I think that's what's causing this problem here. And if I try and do that, if I just untrim that and do that, then it's impossible to see what's going on because I've got highlights on both surfaces overlapping each other. I could put transparency on, and then you can start to see what's going on underneath, but it's still very difficult to make out. And so rather than doing that, you've got this option here of creating curves. And so it creates these blue curves here as well. But you can take off the shading, so you can say show curves only, and then you get a very clear idea of where the highlights are going. So you can see on this little surface here, they're sort of curving up and not really following what this is doing. So there's something wrong there. It's probably this surface that needs modifying. So what I'm going to do there is I'll just take all of the CVs off everything, so we've got a clearer view, and I'm going to look at the CVs on this surface here. Now I think the problem is that if you look at the highlights on here, this comes along and is fine here, but then at this point it's completely different to this. This surface is constrained here, so the highlight needs to be down here rather than where it is. What will make this easier to deal with, I think, is if we just extend this surface down. So before I do that, I should just make sure I've got no history on, because if I've got history on, that's going to cause all sorts of problems. So make sure that's off. And then if we extend that down, what I'm interested in, so let's take these out. I'm going to make them into templates, so that we've still got them in the layer, but whichever layer we're in, I'm not sure, body, but we don't have to look at them in terms of the highlights, etc. So this surface here, I think if we were to measure it to the edge of this wheel arch, we'd probably find it's not very close. So let's go and have a look at that. So if I measure curve to surface from there to this surface here, it's actually not far away, but it does deviate from that that edge there. So I think if we could get this surface close to that edge, in fact, I'm just going to isolate that just to see what's happening there. So we shaded it up. You can see it's actually too far outboard at that point, and that's probably what's part of the problem here, is that's what's going on. So we need to push that in a bit. Got very low degree on this surface at the minute, relatively. So I'm just going to increase that. Let's make that 6. And that just gives us a bit more freedom, in the sense that we've got, you know, we've got G2 here, G2 here, which we probably don't want to touch. So let me just check that. G2, that one and that one. So we've got that there. By increasing the degree, we've given ourselves an extra CV in the middle, which isn't constrained by G2 at either end. So we can now move that around. So I'm just going to move this point in the Y direction. And the other thing is that when I extend this, you can see it does something a bit strange looking, because we've basically gone from, you know, the bottom edge of this was pretty flat in terms of curvature, and by extending it, it starts to curve the other way. That's absolutely fine, because we can trim this or trim convert it back later on anyway. But this is what happens when you extend a surface which has got a flat edge. If I did it on this edge, you'd see the same thing. It would start to curve up, but it's fine. It just helps us build this area. So let's have a look at that in plan view or top view. So you can see the CVs cross over here, but that's perfectly okay. Then there's a transition. So here they separate out the other way, and this one in the middle could really go either way. It's got to be somewhere between that and that, to be honest. So we might be able to use that, or we need to look at those patterns, even though they look a bit strange. Let's push that one in as well. But we need to keep an eye on the patterns of CVs here. Now the surfaces that we're putting on top, these ones that come around here, we want those to be further outboard than this surface. So this actually needs to go quite a lot further in. So maybe I need to increase the degree a little bit more. Let's make it 7 and just give us even more CVs to play with. So if I push that all the way in there, just wondering how far we can take that. I'm not trying to get this down to 0 or anything like that. I'm just trying to get it so that it sits underneath that, or you know, inside that shape there, and that the CVs look reasonable. And ideally the highlights look reasonable. So maybe something like that. Like I say, this is going to look odd because it's such a big surface. And so now let's go and pick those templates, and we'll untemplate them. So go into here and toggle the template off so we get the highlights back on. And of course, this is no longer aligned to that surface. So now I don't know whether we've got any curves on the surface on that surface there. Yeah, we still have. So we want to get rid of those curves on surface because they're old ones. We don't want those. I'm not dragging a window around there because it picks up all the highlights and then deletes them, which, I mean, we can get them back, of course, but we don't want that. So this one here, let's go and put the CVs on there. Now we've got a very high degree there, and we needed that to get this to align last time. But I'm thinking that to make this simpler, when we're working on it at this point, that we should drop the degree in this direction. So I'm going to drop it down to 3, so that then when we align this in G2 to this surface here, it's just pulling these points here, and should give us the basic shape, hopefully. So let's go into align, G2 project. It's going to have to be normal to that surface. So let's see what happens if I do that. So suddenly now the highlights are going more the correct way. They're not actually S-ing through there. Obviously, we've simplified the shape quite a lot by just dropping the degree there. This isn't going to align into here. I know there's going to be alignment issues that we need to then solve. So we've got history on, probably want to turn that off, because we're going to be aligning on multiple edges now. So that's looking better. But obviously I do need to make sure that this is all aligned here. Let's go into diagnostics here. So we've got isoang on, and I've got show curves only. So if I take that off, now we can have a look at the So that's looking so much better. It's quite smooth through there. There's an area there. I think that's on. Not sure which surface that's on. I think it's that one. Let's just make that invisible. Yeah, it's on that one. So we need to resolve that. Obviously, it's because I've dropped the degree going that way. It can't actually align into that surface anymore. But hopefully that will sort itself out. And of course, the other option is horizontal vertical. If you just want to rotate it around and see how things flow across there, that gives us a good idea. So across here, I'm much happier now with that sort of quality that we've got. And at that point, I'm going to save it because it's sort of at a good point there. Let's put that in. And now we need to try and align things properly. So this locator here, which is all the way along this edge, actually isn't what we want to look at, because that's between this surface and that surface, not between this smaller surface. So I'm going to get rid of that because it's going to get in the way. I'm going to just make that invisible so that we can clearly pick the right thing. And then I'm going to put the G2 on that edge there, which obviously has broken. That one's okay. That one will have broken. That one's okay because we haven't touched it. And then on the inside edge, we also want, hopefully we won't be changing it anyway, but just to make absolutely certain that we've not done anything nasty here, I just want to put that on. So now the task is to try and get this to align again. So obviously we need a higher degree here. I can't remember what we had before. I think it was 6. So let's go with 6 because that worked last time. We bring that surface back in here. Let's get rid of the highlights. So when you've got these lines on, I think you can pick them as curves on surface. No, you can't. But there is a way of doing it, which is you go back into ISOANG, and so if I say show curves only, then you have to delete the curves here. So that's how to get rid of them. I'll take that off, but just press delete curves there. So you've got to go into ISOANG and delete the curves. Right, so let's go and take the CVs off that. We don't want to see that. And now we've got to try and get this to align. So let's go from this end. So I will just save it again at that point under the same name, just before I start doing this alignment. And so we're going to align this into here. It's going to be a partial edge. We've got edge on, partial. So we had some fun and games with this last time. So that's coming off at, it's trying to do it parallel to the isopalms of this surface, which we don't want. We just want edge on. And so we're going to have some fun with this, aren't we? I can tell. So we've got position influence of 0, and so it's keeping these points where they are on the original surface there. And then we can bring that up to 1 to make sure that that's actually properly position aligned there. But we've got a hiccup in the CVs here. Now we could try, so I don't really want that to change, and what we could try is doing vector and putting on view instead. So that's much better, because in that view now those look consistent. I know we've got a gap there, but that's very small, and hopefully we can fix that. I'm just going to rotate that slightly and just see if the CVs in this view have gone crazy or not. And once again, I've done it in that view. Let me just revert that actually. So rather than just doing a random view, we need to bring our planes back on and find that plane that we had, which I think is that one. So you can see I've not named it, which was not a good idea. It's always good to name things. Don't always do it. I'll call it a view 1. And I mean, this is the one that we used last time. And so if we go into top there, yeah, we can still use that one. So when we go back into much better to have a plane and know where we started from rather than just a random view. I know it's something that I do quite often. I just do it in a random view and then think, oh, I better set up a plane. Much better idea. And then we do it to that, again, to that edge. Partial edge has gone back on, so we don't want that. Vector's been turned off, so we want to put vector on, and we can either use view or we can use Z, because Z is the same as that view, to be honest. And that's much more controllable and much better because we can rotate the model as well at the same time. Now I'll put create history on so we can then undo that if we wanted to, because what I'd also want to do is now look at the ISO hang highlights, just in case that's screwed them up, because obviously I've just changed those three holes at the end, and then we can put horizontal vertical on and see whether that works, and that's pretty good. I mean, this needs a bit of an alignment there, and of course you get this this is as a result of this overlapping. At the moment I haven't trimmed this back, so you're seeing some of the highlights underneath, which is why it looks a bit weird. It's sort of poking through underneath, but we're going to trim that and get rid of that. So that's that one. Now this one is position, or almost, but not quite. It's 0.002. I'm going to get rid of the curve on surface. You can, I mean, you can get away sometimes, and I'll just try it now, but you can get away with aligning into an edge into the curve on surface. It's not to say that it never does it, but usually it's better to get rid of the curve on surface, but we'll just try it anyway. And so I can use that as an input. It says it's got construction history because I had construction history that way, so I'm going to break that. And then the master geometry is going to be that curve on surface. So there we've had luck. You know, I've just aligned it using edge rather than creating a new curve on surface. So it is an option, and sometimes it gives you actually a better result, but often it's project with, you know, a new curve on surface is the answer. So I just want to check that I haven't created an extra curve on surface, so always worth doing that. And so it's just this edge here that we now need to fix, and this was the problem corner before, and I'm sure it will be a problem again. So let's and this will need this up, you know, in increasing the degree, I'm sure, here. So let's go and align that to that edge, and of course it breaks that side, which is what we haven't happened before. So let's see if we increase the degree and we make it the same as that. It just, so we still got a gap there. We've still got this little gap. So let's try. So I'll take history off. I'm just going to try aligning to that curve on surface like I did for this one, because that might well work. So I'll do G2. Right, that's broken it there. So let's take it back one. So G1 works, gives us tangency. So let's see if we've actually got G2, and we haven't quite. 0.14, because this is where I did some manual work before. Let's try G0, which is very unlikely that's going to work. Yeah. So we go for G1. Now, rather than doing the manual method, I mean, it is very close, that curvature. The other option is we split this into two, or we can go into, if we go into a line again, let's see if I do this. I should have put history on, in fact, because it means we can undo things if I've made a big mistake. So that's tangency. So let's try curvature and just see if we could increase the number of spans. This doesn't usually work, but yeah, so you can see even increasing the number of spans is not helping. So if I've gone up to 6 spans, it's far too many. If it was 2 or 3, then I'd say, yeah, okay, we'll do it. But if it's 6, I think that's excessive. And so the other option, the simplest option here, is going to be just to detach this, and I'm just going to go and detach that. So this is going to screw up the locators because it's going to get confused. But if we said, let's make another surface there, and that's often the solution. But I did show last time that you can do it manually. It's just, if you've got the time to do it, then it makes a nice, neat solution. But if you haven't, then splitting it up is perfectly fine. So let's go. So I've got a curve on surface here, which actually covers both of those edges. And we can align to that, but we have, if we align to it, it's going to have to be a partial rather than a full, of course. So let's just go and put the continuity on here. So the reason I deleted the old locators is because I know they're going to screw up. They're going to tell me that it doesn't quite align, or that this is measuring between the wrong edges rather. So let's try and see if we can align that. Hopefully that will do it. Done it. So that's that's the easy solution in a sense. What you got to watch for is you don't want to split this up to tiny little slithers, because you'll end up with highlights through there which will look awful. Now to make that even softer, the transition, I can put blend on. I just have to be careful that I don't interrupt the curvature on that end. And of course then we want to go back into the diagnostics and look at how that flows across there. Now we're not seeing a great display there because we need to trim this surface back. So let's go into here. I shall also go and delete all of the history first. So let's go and trim that. We don't need 3D trimming on. We've got the curves on surface that we need. So now let's have a look at the highlights going through there. And that looks okay. Horizontal vertical is great, but just you can rotate it around and see what the transitions look like. I think that's okay. It'll do something like this because of the fact that it's curving back on itself. So there'll be interesting highlights going on through there. And then if you want to, this is slightly more real, or easier to sort of understand in terms of reality maybe. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to live with that now. And so we're going to save that under a new name. And then we'll delete all of those locators, get rid of the CVs, and then I'll hide those planes away. So we've now got that area. So let's bring back our mesh. And so the next area I want to work on is I want to start working on this area in the center here. And we've got a bonnet surface, which is that one. So I'll change the color of that to blue. And I'll move that up to here just so we've got it all together. And let's put some sections on. So I think just to separate out this, let's just go through some of these layers and just see what we've got. So we've got that body one, which is just that one surface that we had earlier on. We can delete that one, we don't need that. And then we can delete that layer there. And I will put, I know I've got wheel arch front. I mean, it doesn't matter about separating everything up at this point. It's only just so that we've got something that's just some way of dividing up the geometry so that you can see it clearly, really. I think I'll keep that one and that one, but we don't really want all of that in there. So I'm just going to call that body side in there and hide that from view. There's also a few curves in there that I don't need. That one I do need, but not those two, I don't think. So I'm just going to delete those. So looking in here, it's quite a complicated shape. We've got coming across here, this bonnet surface takes us to a certain point, and then at this section there's another surface coming off, and then it intersects this side surface. And one thing I can see there straight away is that where that intersect is going to be is down here, and we haven't quite extended this surface far enough. So let's go and do that. So let's put the CVs on that, because we want to see the CVs always. You don't just want to extend it. Like I showed you before, you know, that sometimes it curves up, and then we need to adjust the CVs slightly to do that. But I mean, ideally we don't want to do that, of course, because we've got continuity going into these other surfaces, but sometimes you have to do it. And so looking at this, what's going on here? So this section doesn't look quite right. I think this point here maybe needs to come down a touch, just to bring that section on. Now, having done that, let me just undo that, because I'm just realized that I've just broken the continuity there. If I'm doing that, if I pull that CV down, because it's the third hole, I'm likely to break that curvature, but I might get away with it. It's actually okay. Yeah, so I can bring it down to there, and it's not broken the curvature. If I do need to bring it down any further, I could always increase the degree, of course, if I wanted to. So now we've got this edge beyond where the intersect is, or for most of it. Now on the front edge, we haven't quite captured the shape here. So I've got, you can see there's a difference between the bonnet surface and this front edge, because we were going to put in a little surface at the front there to bring that down to that right level. Now my sections look really weird. I was thinking, am I in compressed view? And I've realized, of course, that if I put the grid on, you can see what I've done. I've actually not toggled back to our world space, so my sections are all skewed. So I would need to toggle back to world space and then do those sections again. So it's now brought them up to date. I was thinking there was something weird going on there, and there certainly was. So I need to get this little shape in here first of all, and there's our front curve that we've set up. So what we want to do is separate out that surface there, because it's sometimes since I created that curve, I can't remember whether that actually joins up with that or not. So let's go and trim that. So let's go into top view, and we'll do a curve edit, trim that to there. Oh, interesting. I thought that would trim, to be honest, but obviously it doesn't. So let's do a duplicate on here, and I'll extend that curve on there. You can see things like this edge, you know, could be tidied up, but it's all going to be hidden away, to be honest. So let's trim this back to here. So I just had to extend that curve to get it to trim back to there. And then what we want to do is, if we put a duplicate on there, and I better just check I haven't got interactive on. I haven't, so that just picks up the edge. And then we can go into locators, and we want to compare the actually it's evaluate. So we go into curve continuity there, and I'll look at curvature there between those two curves. So we've got that curve and that curve. So they're not quite aligned there. So let's go and align those and see what happens. I'm just the other thing I want to know is when I align this, because I'm going to align this curve to that one. So I'll put that curve in the curve layer. I'm going to align that to that one. See what the difference is between that and the actual edge that we've got. See whether we just need to adjust that slightly. Let's have a look at that. So object edit, align G2, that curve into there. And I'll take blending off, and I've got history on, so I could go back if I needed to. And then we go into locators, and it'll be curve to curve between that curve and that surface. Just see how far out we are. So it says 0.3, and at this end it's pretty much 0. So we just want to make sure that that's all consistent, and we're going to align that just in G0 there. So it's well away from the curvature at that end, so it won't cause a problem. So that's now position aligned to that. Don't need history on that one. So let's bring that back in. So we now know that curve is consistent with that. We should actually take that And what I want to do then is to, now this won't be 100% correct, but what I'm going to do is put a curve on this edge and just bring it back a bit down here, somewhere like that. So I'm trying to create this surface across here. So let's take that curve and I'm going to mirror it across the other side, mirror it about XZ and do that. And then I'm going to create a rail surface between the two. So just for the sake of tidiness, I'll put that in there. So let's go into body. I'm going to create a rail surface. So I'm going to use two profiles here. So I've got generation curve 2, 1 rail curve. So there's the rail curve. So I can pick that one there, the curve. That's my second generation curve. And then it says pick primary rail curve. So it's that one there. And you can see it goes all the way along this curve, which actually extends too far. But what you can do then is this option which says curve segments on it. If you have that switched on, you can actually drag that wherever you want to. So I could drag it there if I wanted to, but I can also drag it to the end of this curve here. So we just go between those 2 points there. Now I picked up on that curve just because it was convenient, but it's not necessarily going to give us the section that we want. You can see that surface there doesn't actually join up with this one, and obviously we need that to happen. I also picked a random location for that, so it may be that we'll need to adjust that. So let's go and align that surface. So we've got, let's have a look at that. So that's degree 4 by 4. It's another area where if we drop the degree down in the V direction, which you can just see by that symbol, I can't always see those symbols, which is why I sometimes guess which is which. But if we drop it down in that V direction down to 3, so it'll break the history. We don't care because we're going to change it anyway. And then we can align that. So by making it as simple as possible, then you create a very clean result. It might not be quite right, but at least it's clean. And then you can add more complexity to it if you needed to. So I'm going to just see what happens if I say G2 align in the Z direction between that surface and that surface. And it's not bad. I mean, we're not 100% on the data on our bonnet surface there, but you know, maybe we could adjust that if we wanted to. So what I should do, so I've put history on there so that we can actually update this if we need to. And I just want to pick on the mesh there, so let's isolate that lot. So maybe this main surface needs to come down a little bit just to get us a bit closer to that section there. Because the trouble is we've got such a complexity of surfaces coming together that if you have the block surface slightly out from where you want it to be, then the surfaces that hang off it can be a problem to achieve. Now here we're coming back here. Where are we? So we've got a section there, I think, that's absolutely spot on. It's just where it comes away from the front. And so I am going to save this just in case this all goes horribly wrong, because it's quite a big move we're making here. This is another place where, you know, you might think, oh, why don't we just split this? But the less splitting of surfaces you can do, the better, because you just end up with a cleaner result. But of course it is more, can be trickier. So I'm just looking at that inside view to see what happens if we push that back. So I'm just going to pull that back now. And so I'm pulling the whole of the front hull back just to see if we can just get a bit close to that data there. And you can see the surface we've got at the front is updating because I've got history on with the line. So that looks okay. It's pushed it down a little bit in the middle. Let's just undo it. And just do that again. So because I've saved it, it doesn't really matter if this goes badly wrong. It's absolutely fine. Now we've only got three got 4 holes going this way. So that just drops a little bit there. So if I just lift that up a bit, so I'm going to use, I actually did that wrong anyway. So I'm going to undo and undo my deliberate mistake, which wasn't deliberate. Let's undo it once more. That's as far as it went. Is I had the wrong, I had this NUV rather than that picked. I'd meant to be in this one. I just hadn't noticed. So I'm just going to push it back. So I wasn't pushing it back in Z. I was actually pushing it normal to the surface, which is a similar effect, to be honest. It wouldn't make much difference. But, so I'm looking at where it comes together here and how this surface hangs off it. And then this one here, I just want to pull that up to compensate for the difference. So it's bringing it back to the data here. We have got freedom, because it is an interpretation of the data. It's not, doesn't have to be absolutely spot on, but that's looking much better. So I am going to save that once more. That was literally 3 minutes between those, but it's worth doing. You've got a safety net then if you need to go back. Now the next thing I want to do is, like I said, we've got complexity in here. This starts to, we've got a surface coming off here. We've then got another surface being introduced here. So it's quite a complicated area. I'm going to put all of that under bonnet and then hide the bonnet, because now I want to start trying to build them. There's some surfaces in here, which is where it gets quite tricky, I think. So we'll go into, let's just bring everything back in, see what we've got in that model. Take all of the CVs off, and I shall hide that as well. So I can get rid of that. Those curves, don't need those. I'm going to go into this curve layer here, and what I'm going to try and do first of all is set up this. There's a surface in here which is very flat. It's quite difficult to see when you've just shaded it up like that. You can rotate the model, that helps, to see what's going on there. But you can actually use diagnostics on this as well. So if I put isoang on here, and in this case, I'm interested in the shapes going through here. So the general rule is if I'm interested in shapes which are more or less horizontal, which is what these are, then you either want to use Y, which is going across that way, or you want to use X, which is going up that way. But in this case, I want to use Y. It shows me very clearly that the feature here actually curves round, which is not very obvious when you just shade it up at all. So this is what we need to follow. It's very clear. And to create a surface in here, there's lots of different ways you could do this, but this surface, this sort of surface that is at this angle, actually when you start to look at these sections, goes all the way up here, and then carries on quite a long way into here before it disappears completely. So we need to create that surface. It's quite tricky to even see what's going on there. But what you can do is we can just sketch some curves in. So these aren't curves that we're going to use for actually building a surface directly, but just to give us an indication of where these features are. So one of the features we've got is this dip here, which grows, it curves around as well, and obviously we can't tell exactly where that is in space, because the dip which we're going to create, or that intersect between the two surfaces, is in space, but we can get close to it. So if I use edit point curves, I'm going to just use degree 1, so we're just going to draw straight lines, in other words, and I'm going to start from here. So there's a dip here between some block surface here and this one here. Like I say, I can't pick it in space. All I can do is pick on the section, so roughly where it is. Again, here somewhere, that's probably where the dip comes to there, somewhere there, somewhere there. So it doesn't matter about smoothness, because this is degree 1. They're just straight lines, and it's just a way that I can then in other views see what's going on. And it doesn't matter if I get some of the sections not in the right place. It's not important. We have to work that out as we model it. So it's sort of, you can see you've got the zigzags going on here. It doesn't matter. So it's somewhere around there, I think, that where that all comes together. I mean, at some point it will wash out to nothing, so it's almost invisible by the time we get here. So that's about as far as I can go with that. And then we'll create another curve or line. I mean, this is one curve, but it's not a curve that you'd ever use for building a surface. It's degree 122 span, so it's just for indicating where these features are. And so let's do the same thing on this one. So we've got this flat surface here, and then it comes off at an angle, disappears almost by the time we get to here, but it's about there, somewhere there, somewhere there. So I'm just using Control and Alt to pick on the sections. And we're going to use this as a guide to creating some reasonably smooth curves. So it's anybody's guess where that is, but that one looks like it's over there a bit more. Could be there. Now it's starting to, this is becoming one surface, so we just leave that as it is. The other thing that's going on here is we've got this flat surface here, comes into an angle, which disappears at this point. One of the areas that is going to be tricky is this bit here. And because we've got, this is definitely coming down at a distinct angle down here, but we've got a flat in here, which actually seems to extend to this point. So I think what we will have to do is curve the surface in so that you don't end up with, what you don't want is this flat carrying on into here at all, because otherwise you'll end up with a horrible curve going around there that will look very, very nasty, because it'll be rising up the side, or it'll be too flat, and then it'll rise up and do weird things. And this is quite clear, that's one shape in there, but here it's not so certain what's going on there. So we've got to somehow get around that. So I think the intersect there will just have to wash out into there somehow. So we don't really have much to go on there, to be honest. So let's we'll put in a line anyway, for what it's worth. It's somewhere around there, and then probably doing something like that. So it doesn't give us much to go on. This surface in here, which is going to go all the way through to this point, and then it comes off. It's actually got it's got another angle in there that's actually slightly different there. Again, let's have a look at the highlights and see what that shows us. See, that's not looking, the highlights there don't look as though they're great. So we've got to do some interpretation of that somehow. So rather than worry too much about what goes on in all of these detail areas, which is pretty much impossible to do at this stage, I think we just need to put some surfaces in, maybe up to this point, and just see where that takes us. And I think the other thing is that, I've drawn these lines and stopped there, but in fact it's going to wash out. So exactly where it washes out, we'll only find out once we start putting surfaces in. So let's try and do that. So as I say, these are guide curves, and obviously they're not ones that we can use for surfacing. So we need to now, let's create another layer, which we'll put next to there, and we'll call this curves. Curves smooth, and maybe I'll change the color of that to something else. Maybe I'll make it that color, so we can see that those are just guides. So we're going to go and create some nice green curves instead. So we want some good curves in here. So this is because this is such a long shape here, it would make sense to use this edge. So I'm going to just try and get a surface in here that we can use for as much of this as possible. So let's go into CV curves, I'm going to pick that ends point, and then I'm just going to do some freeform. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start off with an edit point curve. So it's just going to be degree 1, and I'm going to go from here. I'll go all the way back to here. But if I do it that way, I don't know why I did the edit point curve, to be honest, because now I've increased the degree. I just wanted to start off with CVs which are all equally spaced. So let's pick individual CVs, and we'll take the mouse sensitivity off. Now on my guide curves, of course, I don't want these CVs on because I'm just going to end up picking them by mistake. So let's switch those off. And then we can move these CVs into place. So obviously there's a lot of leeway because the curve I created there is very rough, and which is fine because we're just picking on data. So now I'm moving these a little bit more left to right and so forth. Don't have to be too careful about this. Now on this side, a lot of this surface is going to be cut away, and I don't know how that's going to work. But if we take that curve there, and then we just Control C, Control V, and move it across to here, and then we can do whatever we want to do with it. It just means that if I copy that, then we've got exactly the same CVs on that in terms of the X spacing. So if I just move them in the Y direction, I think I'm just going to, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter what the shape is there. It's all absolutely invented. It doesn't bear any relationship to what we're trying to create. And obviously in 3D, it's got no Z. It's not going in the right Z location there at all. But it's probably best just to put in a skin between those two curves and then start working on the surface rather than worrying about whether the curves are in the right place. So I'm going to get rid of those curves, and then I'm going to put that surface onto our, got a layer called wheel arch. Don't want to use that, so I'm just going to create another layer. I'll bring it all up to here so that at least we got it together, and I'm just going to call that whip 1. I've probably got one called whip 1 before, I don't know. No, maybe not. And I'll make that blue just so we can see it, and assign it to that. So now let's shade that up, because obviously that's a long way off where it needs to be, and we're just going to pull these holes up in the Z, and putting on shading just means I can see quite quickly whether I'm in the right sort of area for getting these surfaces in the right place, rather than trying to look at the sections, which are, it's very difficult to see the sections early on. And so that's actually quite close. This just needs to come down. We're down there, and that one can go up. So I suspect around this area we're going to have to make up a lot to try and get this to all work together as surfaces. So there comes a point when we get our surfaces together that we'll almost stop looking at the mesh, really, other than a visual reference, because it'll be too far away from where we are, or we won't have the detail in that we need. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, and there's no point in putting degree 2 in it at the minute. Obviously it will need crown on it, because all surfaces need crown in automotive. Pretty much. There's occasionally you get a flat surface, but it's very rare. Usually they want crown on them, but there's no point in putting that on. That's just detail. We're close enough to the data there to allow us to start putting some structure into this model. So we can now take a surface off this edge, and the simplest way to do that is to do an MS draft in some direction, whatever direction that is. So again, nothing happens because two surfaces on. So I don't want that 5,000 millimeter length, just want something like that, and then I want to rotate that So I'm looking at the front end first of all, to see. That's gone really weird, and gone a bit strange. That let's try from the Y direction instead. Maybe that will behave itself better. Yeah, that's better. So I'm looking at this end first of all to see where are we close to the data there, and of course it won't be consistent all the way along. It's not going to be the case, and so we can now start moving CVs around. So I'm going to use normal. I'm going to use proportional modification, delete the history. I'm going to make that blend all the way to the other end, and we'll try and bring that down. What's going on? I think I've got the wrong setting on there, haven't I? I've got that on. I thought I had NUV on, but not. And that's probably close enough. Pretty much. I know it's deviating from here, but that's going to be, that's the detail that we have to get into at some point. Now we've also got these features going around here, which is all complicated. We just save that again while I'm having a bit of a think about the next step. The sort of little details, you really don't want to put in too much of that at too early a stage, because you'll end up just changing it all as the blocks change. Let's bring back the body there. So I'm going to move that out of the way. But I think it'd probably be useful actually to get this line in around here, because then we can start to trim things out, even though nothing joins up. It's all very, very rough, but it's just trying to understand how all of this works together, because that looks tricky around that area for one, and just making it a bit clearer might help. So let's have a look at that. So this is another one where we could use our guide curves here to help us. So let's go and take that off. So I'll go back into the guide curves here and do that. So I'm using edit point curves again. So I can't see anything on there. Impossible to see. So somewhere around there, that's going through there. And then we might have to shade that up. So it may be that we need some more sections on really to see what's going on in the detail. So let's go into there and make those 50 rather than 100. That's a bit better. So I think I've lost the curve as a result of doing that, of course, but we can do a new curve from there. So it's somewhere around there, difficult to see. And then it just washes out into nothing. And the other one the other edge is this one here, which is a lot clearer. So it's somewhere from there. I mean, this one's probably easier to do just from the shaded model, to be honest. I probably don't need to do this. I could just look at the shaded model and create curves directly from that. But something like that. And then if we go into our smooth curves, which I seem to have managed to delete somehow. Maybe I put them on whip. Oh no, I did delete them, didn't I? Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, I just got rid of them. That's fine. So these ones, again, we don't want the CVs on there, otherwise they just get confused. and then we can just do some smooth curves through here. So I'm starting off with degree 1. At degree 5, it could be that we need more than one curve there, but let's have a look, see whether we can do that. So just need to make sure I'm in the right setting there. And I've got PMOD on, which I don't want. Oh, hang on. Is that me making mistakes, or is something weird going on? No doubt it's me. So I think this is, well, maybe we can do this in one curve. If we can do it in one curve, it's best. But like I say, on that shape, we could actually, could have gone from the inside edge actually, and I can clearly see that in that view. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. Let's get rid of that then. So if we go back to our grid there, we did have a plane which was on Z 1500, so we can go and pick that one. And what that means is we can work above the geometry, so it's easier to see then. So I've got my guide curve there, which is actually useful because I can see where it's going to go here, and then I can create the inside edge. It's usually better, I mean, in this case it won't make much difference, but it's usually better to work on the inside of a shape. The reason is because then if you work on the outside of the shape and then try and offset it inwards, what you sometimes find is that it then screws up. Whereas if you start on the inside and work outwards, because we can basically start from this shape and work to that curve and to that curve, working in the outward direction, then the CVs are less likely to screw up. So let's go into this. So I think I'm going to do this in 2 bits. So I'm going to create a shape going through there, another shape there, and then a blend in between, because it's very flat there and very flat there, and then it's quite curved there. So that would make more sense rather than trying to do it in one. And let's make that 3. So I'm trying to get the inside edge in there. It's not going to be super critical. And because this is we've got an acceleration in here, so we want the spacing of the CVs to be pushed towards the right hand side into the corner, and then we'll end up with a better curvature. You can see that, it starts to accelerate there, and obviously you can adjust that however you want to or need to. When you put the blend in, you'll get an idea then of how much acceleration that you need. And then this one here, might be able to get away with just 2, to be honest. But again, you want to bunch it, so you want to push it towards that corner, and then you'll get more of the curvature that you want. But if you want a bit more subtlety to it, then degree 3 would be needed. And then we can put a blend between those two. But I'm going to leave that for a time being. So I'm going to just delete those locators. No, I will put a blend in. So I'm going to actually just use a curved fillet here. So I'm going to go from here to here. So this gives us a balanced result, and then we can just increase the size of that. Now I don't want to trim this back. At the moment it's trimming it back, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep the original curves in there. It's usually the best thing to do, because otherwise you end up with short curves which are difficult to extend. So it's best really to keep that automatic off so it doesn't trim it. And then we just keep on increasing that size until we've got what we want. So I can use Alt in this box and do it that way. Oh, that's gone too big, far too big. So let's try typing some numbers in instead. And now I'm using Alt to just increase that in size. So that's given us it gives us a perfectly balanced result. You might decide that you wanted to make that G3 rather than G2, so you get a nicer result there. It's nothing to do with the radius. No, that could be anywhere up there. What you do find sometimes is that it goes the wrong way. So you might have, say, that. I don't know whether it probably won't work, but you can, if they're on the wrong side, you just pull them to the right side, and then it'll put put it in the right direction. Yeah, but it's nothing to do with the size. Unfortunately, it'd be nice if it was, but no, it's that you have to do it through the menu. But the other thing, I mean, on this one, I've got create history on, but you can see I've not actually achieved the shape that I want. It's not actually going into the shape there. But obviously I can then go and, because I've got history on, I can go and change the CVs on change the original curves there and just see if I can maybe pull that around to get that result that I want. It looks as though I'm not going to be able to do that, to be honest. So I'm going to actually delete that because it's not it's not the shape that I want. And I suppose I could have increased the degree on this and then pull that in a bit more, and then that might give me the result. But if that doesn't, if that doesn't give you what you want, then you can obviously do a blend curve or do what I do, which is to put in an edit point curve. So I'll make that degree 5 and then align that with history on. Do that. So, well, that was good. That was a bit of luck. It's cut in exactly the right place. So if I put the curvature on there, well, you can see the curvature, although I've got curvature continuity here, it's not great because that's a sudden transition of curvature. So the curvature joins up is G2, but it's a very, very sudden change. And actually that could give you a hard edge there, hard looking edge. The same on this side. So ideally you want G3 continuity. So if I go into query edit, you can obviously put G3 on, but you've got to have enough. You've got to have a high enough degree, so you've got to have degree 7, or you can go for G2 and then just adjust this to try and get you something that's a bit more G3 like. So you start off with you're pulling that edge out, and obviously this screws up the curvature, and the same on that end there. And then you can pull these CVs towards the center, and the further you pull these out, the more likely you are to get a G3 type continuity. So you can start to see it maybe a little softer than it was. So it depends on how soft you want the result to be, how much you pull these out. So the angle there's coming down, and but sometimes it's you just put G3 on, and that'll obviously do the trick. But you see that's much better there. This one's a bit hard still, so this one needs to come out a long lot further. Now I'm finding it a bit difficult to see the CVs in there, to be honest, because I've got CVs on top of CVs and I've got a lot of things going on. So let's put the CVs just on that. So what I don't want is these CVs crossing over in the center. So if I query edit that again, we could do that. Let's shade that up. So I've got more of a balanced result now. I've got, if you imagine if theoretical intersect between that tangency there and this one there, it's about here, and you want the CVs either side of that. So you want either 3 CVs on one side, 3 CVs on the other side. That gives you a better result. Now what I can do here, I could do G3 and then just increase the degree. The other option is to just increase it by 1, so you make it degree 6, and then you just pull that center point into the corner, and you can then manually get G3. So I've got pretty much G3 there without having to increase the degree further, but it depends what you prefer to do. But just means you've got fewer CVs to deal with. So if I slow that down a little bit, I can move. I'm moving that in the Y direction, and then I'm moving it in the X direction to adjust at both ends. So it's pretty much G3 on both ends, but it's up to you. So you can. I've still got history on, even though I've got a middle point now that I've added. So I might just bring that a bit further into the corner, and then move that CV once more, just to get closer to the mesh. So I've just realised that needs to go to the left a little bit. Give me G3 there. So something like that. And then we can go and delete those locators. And then these other shapes, what we want to do there is to use exactly the same curves here and just offset them. Now we'll take the shading off because it's a bit easier to see. This one looks like it should be just a pure offset, so that would be good. So I've got this will give me the same CVs as the original, which means when I put my surface in, it's going to be wonderful because the CVs will all join up. I've got history on there, so we should be able to just query edit that one and just bring it back a touch, just to get close to that line, although it doesn't actually matter. I don't know why I'm fussing about it, because when I put the surface in, of course, I'll be able to see, I'll probably need to adjust it slightly, but at least we're starting off with some clean curves here. And the same thing, this one here, you can see there's a slight taper going on there, so it'll start off as maybe not, actually that's pretty much spot on. That's just another offset. And then the one in between, this one here, well, because I've got a different offset here and a different offset here, it's obviously not going to align there, but we're close enough that we can then just align those together. And again, the corner, the CVs will all be perfect because they'll have the same pattern of CVs. So I'll make that. This one, I've got to remember I've got that middle point there, so I should put some blending on, or I could just say G3. I might as well just say G3 because it'll do the same thing pretty much. And then on this end here, difficult to see. I know all these curves overlapping each other, and I've got curves on curves. I suppose what I should do, what would make it easier, would be to just make that set the state to inactive, so we can see those lines rather than actually picking them all the time, which is a pain. So let's, or you can just template them. So in that direction, we'll just put, you see I've got G3 on, but it's going to ignore the middle point because I've already got that is controlled by the other end anyway, so it's not going to make any difference. It's only going to achieve G2, but chances are the curvature will be fine. And then this outer edge, we should be able to just offset that as well. So let's go from this one and we'll offset that. Now I'm not sure, thinking about it, right, it has created another curve. I wasn't sure whether it was going to pick up the other curve and modify it, but it actually creates another curve, so that's good. So we'll go from this one, and this one's completely different, of course. It's not an offset, but we can just put that out there as a starting point, and then we maybe, just do whatever we need to do, maybe put a pivot on there somewhere, and then just rotate it into position. So at least we've got the same CV spacing, and I'll put those curves onto the layer that I was supposed to be on, which is that one. And then we'll offset that. The final one is going to be offsetting this blend here. And of course, that's going to be a long way off, but that's okay, because then we can just align that one this way. So again, I'm going to put G3 on that one, and then this one I'll do as G2 into here. We might need to adjust these, of course, to get decent shapes and so forth, but at least we've got a set of consistent curves that when we start to build the surfaces of those, and obviously these are up in space at the minute, all the surfaces will be consistent with each other. So let's just save that. So it's another situation where I work in 2D, and then I'm going to, I take them just as an example at this point, just do what I did before, which is to take a skin from here to here, for example, and then we just move that surface down, and so I'm just moving it down in Z, and then we just mess around with the CVs until we get the get it roughly in the right position. So let's go into that. I don't want mouse sensitivity on, and again the shaded helps enormously, because otherwise you just cannot tell which section belongs to which on there. So we just want to, okay, so that's that, and then this whole edge. So I'm just moving in Z all the time. So in plan view, it stayed exactly the same as we had before, and that's not too bad there. So now we're into individual, so that was moving holes, now we're into individual points. And on this end it's going to be twisting, it'll twist and then disappear completely. So whether this stops here is very unlikely. It's going to actually have to carry on, but we will only find that out once we start to develop these surfaces together. And so that's close enough, and we'll continue from doing that on those other curves there.